Through more than 2 decades at Kenner and Hasbro, Aaron built worlds, told stories, and designed toys for some of pop culture's biggest names, including Transformers, Batman, Star Wars, and more. Join him as he explores the archives and tells you the stories of the creative process behind your favorite toys. This is the Toy Armada with your host, Aaron Archer.
So we are back again. It is episode 2 of the Toy Armada with Aaron Archer. And last episode was pretty good. Got some good feedback. Got some love from the Star Wars community. They really liked what we put together. And before we jump into episode 2, we're going to be talking about Batman and the movie-related toy lines that Aaron worked on. We are first going to jump into some questions from last episode in relation to Star Wars. And so we have today with us again, Aaron Archer. How you doing, Aaron?
I am doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So we got 3 questions here. I had to go through some of them, and some of them were more like, but we have 3 really good ones here. Again, if you want to ask any questions, just hashtag the Toy Armada on Twitter, or just find a way to just private message me with it if you don't want to put it out publicly. So we have one here first from the Jedi Insider, and they want to know, you mentioned how it was all hands on deck for Star Wars Episode 1 with Hasbro. When they went into Episode 2, did that trend continue, or did the sales of Episode 1 toys combined with the public perception of the movie change Hasbro's manpower for future Star Wars properties, specifically the movie stuff, in that era?
No, I don't. So what I think happened was that you get a team up and running, and you get a flow going with the sculpting and the approval and the creation process, and that happens faster. Episode 1 was so secret and held close by Lucasfilm that it necessitated a big army to get it all done. As that flow happened for Episode 2 and 3, you didn't need as big a team, but it was as important to the company, certainly. However, that was right when Hasbro moved the Kenner offices from Cincinnati to Rhode Island, which kind of put a bind in the development timing of Episode 2, to the point where a lot of the designers in Boys Toys all did contributed to some aspect of Episode 2 action figure development.
Interesting.
We all got a little extra assignment to just complete, basically, just get this done. That's one of the things I remember. So it was still a bit of a fire drill for a different reason, but I think it was just the creation of that first team was to get it right, and then the plan was set, and we could just repeat it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Especially because he mentioned also, like he said, the sales and public perception of the movie. Did that affect anything in any way, do you think? Like, did you think they toned it down the second time around?
Well, I assume they did. I don't really have knowledge of that.
I think from my perception as a fan, I think they did. Like, obviously, I think Episode 2 was not as bombastic, but I mean, maybe internally, I don't know. We'll jump into the second one here. We got a question from Spacebound, and he wants to know, what do you think of what was absent from the Episode 1 toy line that you think would have either helped either the collector side of things, or on the flip side, to encourage children or younger fans to buy the toys? Do you feel that there was anything absent from the Episode 1 line that you think that would have helped it?
I don't think I had anything in real time, like, oh man, we should really be doing this instead of this. But I think there was a unusual amount of respect paid to the old toy style and scale back during that time. Just out of habit or thinking that was special and precious. As far as collector stuff goes, the first things Kenner or Hasbro made that we talked in terms of collector was the Unleashed segment.
Ah, yes. Those statuesque.
So anything else was just kid toy, big business kind of attitude. The collector mentality, let's think about them, came later. So we wouldn't have had a concept of, we should do 6-inch, or something Star Wars back then.
Yeah.
It just didn't exist. Unleashed was the first thing we purposely created.
When did that come out, Unleashed? That was like...
It was 99. I know we were working on it in 99. It might not come out till 2000.
I remember a Luke and a Leia one that was pretty impressive.
The first one was the Darth Maul, and that was actually developed with Wayne Losey again. And Art Asylum did that first test sculpt to, what could this look like.
Yeah, they were pretty cool. All righty. Yeah. And the last one here, we have Mark from New Jersey here, and he wants to know, who do you think shot first, Han or Greedo?
Oh, Han.
Okay, yeah,
absolutely.
that's
listen, if you go to the Star Wars novel written by George Lucas, air quotes, read the dang book. It says Han shot first. It's in there. So he, whatever. It's all revisionist.
The Galoob Micro Machines playset. There's a little Galoob Micro Machines playset of the Cantina. Even Han shoots first in that one. So there's a little action feature where Han shoots Greedo, but you don't see Greedo shooting Han. So even in toy fiction, Han shot first. So so those are 3 questions. Again, that's the general way we're going to be doing it, where every time we do a segment, if you guys have any questions in relation to that segment, just hit us up on Twitter, and we will try to make it part of the podcast. We'll pick 3 really good ones that emphasize something that really brings up the brand and everything. But today we are going to be talking about Batman, more specifically. Again, Aaron has had a lot to do with the Batman brand, quite a lot actually, to the point that we decided that we're going to do multiple different segments of Batman in relation to different segments of that insanely huge brand. So today we are going to be doing the movies, specifically the live action movies, and a little bit of the animation on the side. And Aaron worked on specifically the Batman Forever stuff in 95 and the Batman and Robin stuff in 97. But we're also going to kind of take that trip like we always do. We're going to go through just the history of how we got to this point and everything, and Aaron's place in all of that. So before we get into anything else, the question I want to ask is, that original 1989 Tim Burton Batman movie.
Yeah.
Where were you? When did you see that? What was this? Where's Aaron Archer in that moment of this? Of literally probably, and I've said this many times on my podcast also. I always said that original 1989 Batman movie was literally that first domino piece that just people don't realize how much that affected everything, both in the toy industry, in the telling of fiction for cartoons, because that then leads to the animated series, and which leads to Beast Wars and Gargoyles, and it's insane how much those tentacles go out there. But where were you when this movie came out?
Well, I was in line for a midnight showing, which would have been the first showing, wearing a full Joker costume.
Are you serious?
in makeup. Absolutely.
Oh, my God.
Absolutely.
Please tell me you have a photo of that.
I probably do.
Oh, my God.
I probably do. And I believe I saw that movie, I am not kidding, 6 times in the first 2 weeks it came out. Because anybody who wanted to see it, I was like, I'll go. And I'll state that I happen to live like 3 blocks from the theater that was playing Batman. It's the theater I saw Ghostbusters in, The Right Stuff, Dune. So I knew how to get for the midnight showing. I knew what I needed to do. So that is how I experienced it. And then it was everywhere. So my marching band played Batman music that year, which would be my senior year in high school. I was, tight with the comic book guy. So I had the first Batman hat in the area and all that jazz. Batman was huge.
Well, that logo specifically.
Oh, yeah.
That more movie aesthetic logo just all of a sudden.
Well, it was
on
like
pins, T-shirts everywhere.
People, I mean, we really don't appreciate it. Like, people used to think of superheroes as everything had to be made of lycra and silk, you know, to represent what those costumes look from the comics. And that first Batman movie was just like, oh, it's armor, and this dude's not running around in, you know, nylon. Great.
Yeah, spandex.
It was really I mean, it just made it cool, you know.
Yeah, it was. Well, not to mention Tim Burton's choice to really go very dark.
Sure.
And people need to understand, obviously you can have listeners of different age groups here, but Batman up to that point, even if you picked up the books, was still a blue costume. DC was still going by the comic code, and they were playing it safe. Up to that point in terms of fiction, and we'll get into that a little bit with the toy stuff also. But,
all the psychological stuff with the character and the Joker and stuff comes way later after, or around that time.
Well, that movie, while Tim Burton says he credits, you know, Batman the Dark Knight with Frank Miller and stuff, but, you know, there's so much of what was the public perception of Batman if you weren't a comic book reader that was either the Adam West series or the Super Friends cartoon. You know, and anything kind of, you know, little things in between that, the standalone Batman series and cartoon and everything. But it's by Filmation. It's something that people had one perception of Batman, and it was never that. It was never that. And then
it was that campy show, you know.
Yeah, that's if probably for the most mainstream thing at that point. And
I think they had to defend against that at the time, you know.
Well, it was really pushing against something that was very strongly that. And luckily, we also, you know, we didn't exist in time. Well, that's not true to the source material. You know, thank God we didn't live in that era, because then it's like it wasn't campy enough. You know, like imagine if people were complaining about that. You know, but it's just that that movie was just so different than what people expected, and it was. I always said how there was a point when DC was ruling the movie world. You know, now it's like Marvel is Marvel, and DC's trying to catch up. But during that, you know, Superman, Batman time, DC was killing it. They were just really doing a great job. And what we're going to do, so we're going to jump into the toy side of it with the first Batman movie. So just to go a little backwards, Kenner, 1984, they had that Superpowers line. Extremely successful for them. They made tons of money, was extremely popular, still collected and speculated by a lot of people. Those were some of like the very first DC toys that had articulation and stuff like that outside of Mego and everything. And after a while, like anything, Kenner the sales started to get a little thin, and then in late 96, Superpowers was done. Here's this up-and-coming company called Toy Biz. They get the rights to do the Batman movie toys, specifically that 1989 Batman movie we're talking about with Tim Burton. Those are the legendary gold card ones. They're the ones that they were sometimes called the DC superheroes, which were mixed with other characters. Love or hate the line, DC was not a fan of the quality of the toys. They felt that... despite the fact that the movie was a huge success, Toy Biz didn't really put out enough to meet the demand. 3 action figures, Batman, Joker, and Bob the Goon, along with a playset.
Cool Batmobile?
The Batmobile, which came with the shell, I guess we'll call it, which was literally probably shell, the shield, which breaks like nothing. And they weren't happy with everything that was put out. Even the Batcave itself, they weren't happy with it. It was done. It was one piece of plastic on one side and cardboard on the other. Very, very rickety, I guess is the best way to put it, to the point that DC took away the toy license from Toy Biz. And this is where then Kenner slides in, and Kenner inked a deal in 1990 to get back the Batman brand and start doing their own Batman Tim Burton movie. Keep in mind, Batman Returns had not come out yet. And in 1991, the Batman Dark Knight collection had come out. And not long after that, some of those Dark Knight toys would find their way into the Batman Returns line as repacks, Laser Batman, Aqua Batman, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of just the history going into that. Of course, then the Batman Returns movie comes out. Also does well.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, the story with that too, a little bit of
go ahead.
Kind of legend, because I wasn't there when they got the license back from with
Toy
DC. But I think it was one of those deals, not unlike the Star Wars situation, where they kind of let the Batman license lapse, or gave it away, didn't find interest in it, and then realized that the movie was what it was, and was like, oh, well, had we known, we would have really been able to do something with that. It's a shame we let it go. And they basically made them an offer they couldn't refuse, and that's how they got it back. Not that Toy Biz didn't do it, got it taken away and everything, but that's how Kenner got it. Like, oh my gosh, we shouldn't have let that go.
Well,
and paid a lot to get it back.
Especially with the story with Toy Biz, it's like supposedly just DC was not happy with the quality of the toys. They just felt that, we have this amazing movie that's going to launch now, everything, and the product that they were putting out just wasn't up to snuff. The good news for Toy Biz is they would lose Batman, but they would end up getting Marvel in the end. And we all know how well that worked for them in the 90s with the Marvel brand.
Sure.
Especially when it would then spawn Marvel Legends and everything. But so it's at least there's a happy ending for Toy Biz with that. But then Kenner would get it, and
it was like the guy that made that deal, a previous president or something, paid more money than anyone paid to get something at the time.
Well, they probably saw. They're like, this is,
and it was. I mean, Batman was the number one boys property at Hasbro the whole time I was there, and we were only behind Power Rangers the majority of the time I was there, until maybe Beast Wars came in for a little bit. But Batman was very important, and one of the cornerstones of boys action back then.
And not to mention, they signed this deal in 1990. I don't know how early, because you weren't there either at the time, but also we have the animated series that's going to be coming out in September of 92. I'm pretty sure there was probably some writing on the wall, like, hey, this movie is doing insane. Sooner or later, they're going to do a cartoon. There's going to be toys that are going to be needed with that.
Yeah.
They probably knew whatever that deal was that they were inking, they were going to get that money back pretty quick with a lot of stuff coming. So now let's go into Batman Returns. So again, this movie comes out. The bat, the cat, and the penguin. That's the big tagline on it. Tim Burton is back. Some people argue even darker than the first one, to the point that McDonald's pulls their toys after their first week, at least in some regions, not everywhere, but in some regions. I know in Canada it wasn't an issue, but in the United States they pulled their toys because they didn't realize, wow, like it's a little, it's a little dark. Where were you when this one came out? What did you think of it? Did you now show up in a Catwoman outfit? Because now I'm worried.
No. I was in college at that point, and I did win a radio contest to see it on a midnight showing as well.
Wow.
So I saw that before it came out. I remember not liking it as much.
Okay.
I'm not into gross and stuff, and the penguin with the black goo and everything.
Black goo?
Yeah, I'm not a gross person, so that movie got more gross. But I love the penguin toys. They're the literal little penguins with the...
Oh, yeah, the actual penguins.
Yeah, with the rockets on their backs and
the little
stuff.
2-pack,
yeah.
Penguins Army.
That became kind of a reference point in developing toys within the Batman team. Like, well, at least you don't have to put 2 penguins on a blister. You know what I mean? It was a funny reference.
Backpacks. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because it just to everybody seemed like the most unusual toy that Kenner ever made. The way the old school designer system worked, it just was an oddball thing for those guys.
So then, of course, now before you come into the company in 95, there's one more stop that we have along the way. And so, like I mentioned, September 1992 comes around. Batman is at his peak popularity because of these two movies. There's a Batman the Animated Series that's created, the debuts on Fox. And all these toys, Kenner is now pumping out this product. They start the plans for one more movie here, a Batman Mask of the Phantasm animated movie that will be hitting theaters Christmas Day, December 25th, 1993. Now, to meet those demands, all the toys, and of course for the holiday season, Blitz and everything, the Mask of the Phantasm toy line is put out a month and a half in advance, except there's just one problem. One of those toys, specifically the Mask of the Phantasm toy itself, is not wearing its mask and spoils the identity and the hook of who is the Phantasm. And we learn that it's Bruce Wayne's love interest. Again, spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it up to this point, Andrea Beaumont. Now, you weren't in the company at the time, but do you have any take on that? Like, again, here's this movie, and the whole hook is like, who is this, this mysterious Grim Reaper character? And Wylon Kenner is putting that character without its mask on the shelves for everyone to see a month in advance before its Christmas debut.
Yeah. No, I don't remember anything about that, and we never really. It wasn't a cautionary tale or anything either. So I don't really know. That stuff happens a lot, obviously, where the pattern of things coming out, ruins some surprise or debut of something. Global manufacturing timing is
It seems like because the movie was going to debut on Christmas, combined with that this was going to be a holiday, purchase thing, that probably, I feel, was what led to maybe. But
that stuff might have been in the style guide that way. Not a lot of times people develop products. It's not like we read the scripts or we're in the deep meetings with the producers and directors going, here's our angle. We're not going to let anybody know what the Phantasm is. That's a big secret. Okay, it's not like that trickles down to the toy company unless they, make some sort of plan. So it could have been very easy, like, oh, this is the villain. Okay, cool. And here's the style guide you sent us. Great. We'll use this as our reference and we'll sculpt it up and away we go. There's no knowledge that it's some secret, super secret kind of thing.
Not to mention, from your perspective, it's like, why would you, if this has a removable mask accessory, why would you hide all the detail and everything in the blister? That's
in the business we call that hiding the value.
There you go. Exactly.
And yeah, absolutely. Plus, there was probably a spring-loaded head on that one.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And you wouldn't want the that spring to be compacted in the package. So that was another reason it wouldn't have been covered up. But, there's other clever ways that could have been done with cardboard or with a question mark or, something.
Oh, yeah. Well, to reference, many years ago, there was a line of action figures for Inspector Gadget. And they did a action figure of Dr. Claw. Now, for people that aren't familiar, Dr. Claw and Inspector Gadget, you never see his face, ever. And they did an action figure of Dr. Claw. And the company, I don't remember which company it did it offhand, but what they did was they actually put a piece of cardboard around his face, and the hook was when you bought the toy, you'd get to see Dr. Claw's mangled face. So it's been done. I think also with wrestling, they did something similar where Kane had a removable mask, and you could see his face under it with the WWF at the time. So it's always been kind of a selling point in the past with other toy lines.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get into, it's 1995. You've joined the company. You're going to start cutting your teeth on a whole bunch of stuff here. So you come into the company. We're not talking Batman Forever yet, but you come into the company, what are they talking about? Where are they putting Aaron Archer when you come in?
Well, I was initially going to be on Gargoyles, but by the time I got in there, Gargoyles had already been kind of run through and wasn't going to go forward. So I got put on Batman. They were in the middle of like wave 3 or 4 of Batman Forever's product. So I come in at kind of this time where there's a lot of tooling and models that have already been made, and discussing redecos and different things start coming in. But toy lines had a longer tail back then, which meant Batman Forever product could live in stores reasonably for at least 2 years. So product kept getting developed, new product, new ideas, new segmentation of the movie line. So yeah, I come in during this kind of inventive buzz where the movie is already, is it going to come out that summer? But the die is cast on, the main wave stuff and the Batmobile and the Batwing and all that stuff. That's all done. So now it's almost just like fun toy playtime. Here's the rules of the universe, the style. Have fun.
Not to mention, you mentioned how a toy line based on a movie could last for a year or 2 years. We also exist in a time where movies in theaters, it has its run, maybe 6 months. And then there's that purgatory period, and then we have also a VHS release afterwards, which
sure.
Then,
and
during a time when
in the development,
when rentals are still a big thing, people go to the movie the rental store, rent a movie. So that's also another window now from the big screen to the small screen. Kids are now renting the movie, want to get Batman Forever product. So that also, I think, is what also stretches.
Oh yeah, there was a bump when it got to home video or whatever it was called back then. You could. We would have advertisements in the VHS packaging, promoting, toys for the movie you're watching, and kids, if we remember, would watch those movies on repeat.
Oh yeah, I was definitely one of those. So before we get into the movie itself, let's talk about the toy line and development. So I have here one of the first things you worked on was the Lightwing Batman.
Yep.
So what could you tell us about that, like the whole process of it and everything?
So Lightwing Batman was a item that was sold in already, so it had already gone through presentation stage. So it was in the, let's make this kind of stage when I came into the company. It was a model developed by a guy called Ham Woodhouse. Great dude who was in my interview and created a ton of great product. He ultimately did the talking Darth Vader helmet. He was the guy that did the lightsabers for years. He too, unfortunately, passed away a few years ago after he retired. And he's one of the great unsung guys in toys. He did Ghostbuster toys. He came from Matchbox in England. Great dude. And he was an inventor and kind of a model maker. And he would just make these little glued up models and things that we would sell in, and people go, oh yeah, if you can do that, that'd be a great toy. So Lightwing Batman was one of these models where he light piped light out these kind of clear translucent wings. So I got handed this model on my very first day, halfway through the day, because it took a half day to get a desk in my office. And he said, do the input for this. So that was my literal first sculpt input of a toy. Was that Batman. And then I worked with a young engineering co-op to do the drawings for the wings, the pattern drawings for the wings, which I learned a lot about how that all works, because you remember I'm an illustrator, storyteller coming into the toy company at this time, so I'm learning a lot about plastic and manufacturing and molding and all the industrial design stuff. But that young engineer that I worked with, he was a co-op, his name is Jerry Javoine, and he ended up staying with the company and ended up becoming a marketing guy on Transformers, who I worked with for years. And so my first day of Kenner, I worked with a guy I got to work with for years.
It's funny how that works, huh?
It is. It really is.
So I just want to jump into, so before we get to some of the other stuff that you worked on, so this line, it had the tagline, it was no question, it's Batman forever. Like that's the tagline that they went with. The attempt, according to what I saw here, was they were trying to do something different than what the Dark Knight collection was and Batman Returns in the animated series, going away from one sculpted Batman mold with repaints and accessories attached to it to more fresher sculpts. And like everything is a new sculpt in a lot of ways, which was, again, different from what those 3 series were doing beforehand. Also, and this involves you because of some of the stuff that you worked on, one of the first times that we see store exclusives where Target would be involved with some of these toys being Target exclusives at the time.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Let me explain that first part you talked about, how this was a different type of Batman. Most of the life cycle of Kenner, you would have had a system that had marketers on one floor, engineers on another floor, designers on another floor, having these intermediary conversations with higher-ups going back and forth up and down the chain. And that's one way to develop stuff in an old manufacturing system. But as automation and speed of communication and everything was happening in the 90s, the Batman Forever team, so to speak, was pulled together into one space. So all the designers were working next to the engineers nearby the marketers who were working on it, so that everybody could appreciate the full package and talk about what they did and didn't like or didn't work or why. Because sometimes some real legitimate design concern would never be fully understood by a marketer because you could never talk to them, that kind of thing. Yeah. Very strange process back then. But so this Batman team was put into one big conference room, which was called the Batcave for a while. And all that product and that mindset was developed at that time, and that process worked so well that the company shifted to a team mentality. So I came into a world that was already team-oriented. You know, I sat across from my marketer, for instance, and just 2 cubicles down from my engineer that I was working with. So so that's how that stuff was developed for Batman Forever, and why it might feel a little different or risk-taking, because it was set up to do that. And then the exclusive things, so as I came in, I kind of hinted to this about the Star Wars too. When you come into a new team or a new situation, you know, you can't just wait around for everything you develop from scratch to grow. So you kind of get projects dumped on you, that other people don't have as much time for or whatever. So this project came up where the marketers were like, we have a request from a retail store that they want exclusive product, and if they, this is how it works. If you make us some sort of exclusive product, we'll buy a certain amount of volume, and then in the end you win and we win because we can advertise this kind of special reason to come into our store, and you get the volume you would have got either way with hopefully minimal, package change or real effort made, So in the case of this, Target came to Kenner for the wanting exclusive, and those were seen a little bit, they're redecos, so they're a little seen in the inventor community that was Kenner as a lame product to do. Some of those old timers I worked with they would just laugh at how toys are developed now. But I'm not going to get into that. But so just doing some retailers redecos was like kind of dumb work for mech tech inventor type people, right? So I was the dumb illustrator kid that liked to pick colors. Yeah, I'll take that on. Great. What I didn't realize is I think I did the very first Target exclusives with Hasbro's entity, doing those 3 figures. And I took my friend Wayne Losey's figures, he was on the Batman team, and redecoed the 3 that I liked the best. That's how those got made. And we did like a metallic sheen kind of pearlescent thing to kind of make them special or different than the mainline stuff, a reason to find them out, seek them out.
So those three that you're referring to, we have the Transforming Batman,
Yeah.
which uses the same idea from the previous, I guess, Transforming Bruce Wayne Batman from the Dark Knight series, Dark Knight collection, and Batman Returns, which is a Bruce Wayne figure with Batman pieces. We have then the Riddler with Trapping Brain Drain helmet. And the last one we have here is the Tide Racer Robin with deep dive gear and Sea Claw launcher.
That
Now,
figure's cool.
with
Still
these
cool.
figures, I know you weren't there for the early development, but when they come up with these gimmicks and stuff, is this something... Now, you've talked about how George Lucas and how Lucasfilm and stuff, they have their way of how they tackle that stuff. But how was it being done with Batman, let's say, and Joel Schumacher?
I think there was less connection. I mean, what happened was, like you hinted at, Batman, the first one, changed everything. Mm-hmm. So by the time you get to the third and fourth ones, it's the whole multi-tiered opportunity is baked into the cake. So you have filmmakers listening to toy companies going, well, if we had a climbing Batman that went up the wall, that'd be pretty cool. Okay, and let's put it in a movie. You know what I mean? Those kind of conversations now are more open and able to be had, whereas even a decade before, it'd be like crass, commercialization. Who are these people coming in to tell me about my art? That kind of attitude. Now, by then it was a partnership. How are we putting butts in seats? How are we making money for these corporations? And hopefully they're everybody's deals. So that's kind of what started to happen.
Well, because especially when you look at these toys, like to give an example, we'll start with the Riddler one. Like the Riddler one has a brain drain device. Now, granted, he never uses this in the movie, but it's kind of based in what he was doing.
Yeah, so
in the movie.
Kenner, we talked in the Star Wars, they love mechanical or storytelling kind of toys, things that promote activity. And there was a culture because of those mini rigs of believing that you could take the essence of a movie or the storyline and like squeeze it for other opportunities. So if the Riddler was doing, these types of things, then it made sense to kind of take that next step into like, oh, he's got this brain drain device. That was a very natural way for us to think. Very part of the process.
And especially, too, like, again, there's the Batboat scene. You have a Batboat that's involved in the movies. So why not have Robin have some kind of aquatic-based kind of sub-thing that, again, wasn't used in the movie, but here
Absolutely.
is something that's kind of like that.
Yeah. We will touch on this repeatedly.
Oh, yeah.
On the
Especially
Batman.
when we get to Batman and Robin, the movie, too. The talking Riddler figure.
Yeah.
So, how does that work? Like in terms of like who's recording the voices on that? You're obviously not getting Jim Carrey. How does that work?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot. It's all based on contracts the actors have with the studios. Mm-hmm. Most of it at this point in the 90s, most of the main stars have some sort of first right of refusal or some sort of way to handle toy partnerships. A lot of the big name actors are not interested, obviously. Why would I want to go into a booth, get paid near nothing compared to what I normally get paid, to say some stupid throwaway lines that are coming through a half-inch speaker, right?
Yeah.
It just really isn't. It's not. The economics aren't worth it for them, and the economics aren't really worth it for the toy company to pay for that. At least at that time, it didn't seem like it. Now it could be debatable. Now I think there can be bigger partnerships with the various voice talents and actor talents. But back then, it was kind of. So I think we used a sound alike. You can see how big that box is.
Oh God, it's huge. It's
to
the
make
size
that
of the
thing,
figure.
Yeah. It was a deluxe figure, so it probably grossly oversized on purpose to fill out a package.
Probably. Yeah.
But that was a weird figure, but a posed figure if you think about it, because he holds his question mark staff diagonal across his body, which didn't happen a lot at that point either.
You also touched on, again, like when it comes to the actors being involved and stuff. So here's another question that comes up a lot: actor likeness. How what is the because I this is a conversation that
I got a couple stories. So
that's what I imagined.
we had a plaster cast of Val Kilmer's face that was taken for some other role he had done, and Warner Brothers sent it to us. Like a death mask, like a squinty-eyed.
Really?
Because you're
trying to think what
plaster.
that would have been. What was he?
So we had that, as a reference. You back then the internet did not exist the way it does now. You couldn't just pull images down and do a turn with various images that you could find. So there were magazines and stuff. One story I have there was a sculptor in charge of the Batman line who went out to Uma Thurman's house to get her approval for her head, and literally spent like 5 hours in her bedroom on her bed sculpting her as she explained, the lines of her face, because they definitely know their angles and things. So he had a one-on-one sculpting session basically with the actor. Now, that's very rare. She obviously cared, to give up that time or have it be done right, to do that. Most I've never heard another story like that.
Interesting. Because I know that, and we're just going to go backwards a little bit. There was rumors for years and years. During Batman Returns, the actor of Marlon Wayans was supposed to be Robin at some point in the script of the movie. There, if you look on the extras of the Batman Returns DVD, there were storyboards of here's how Robin would have been played into it and stuff. And so one thing led to another, and the Batman Returns toy line had a Robin figure in it.
Yeah.
And it had a flat top. There's a lot of rumors going, it was supposed to be Marlon Wayans, and because he wasn't used in the movie in the end, they changed, obviously, the character back to being white, but the sculpting of the flat top hair existed. Mm-hmm. Years later, Tom Lyle, who worked on the Tim Drake Robin comic books, showed some old control art that he worked on, and it was like a spitting image of that Robin action figure, right down to the hair curls and everything, and even the flat top hairstyle, which I guess was a style that Tom Lyle was doing at the time with the Robin books in the 90s. So it kind of debunks that. But that being said, how much, during that early process of designing these toys that are based off of actors, because it's a live action movie, how much of it do they lean on it looking like the actor?
Well,
opposed to not, because things change in development, and I'm going to get into that especially afterwards.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is you're talking from the old world development of product for these kinds of things to where we are today is a universe away. So back then, it was kind of like the best you could do was look at photos from maybe one angle, maybe you had a 3/4, maybe it was just and the sculptors did their best, and that was acceptable, right? Because you couldn't watch the movie repeatedly, everybody else could only see the same photos that you were using for that sculpt anyway. So I kind of make the joke about the old Star Wars toys looking like they were sculpted out of butter. But that was acceptable back then. It was still more detailed than other stuff.
Yep.
By the time you get to Batman and stuff, you're still in a development process that's 14 months out from being able to put something on shelf. So you have to make calculated decisions well in advance, or use looser materials, concept art, early development stuff, animatics to kind of squint and go, okay, I think this is what they're going for. Whereas now you can see the full progression where you're talking about CG assets and scans and actors, and you can get all that data and then just instantly go to town and make your things. You can shrink development processes down to, even on big launches, if everything in the world is humming correctly, 10 months, 9 months, 6 months if you, have other issues going for you. But back then it was more acceptable to kind of have a squint and go, yeah, you can make that Robin halfway in the middle or something. We'll see where it goes, and maybe made a color choice late. I don't know. I can't make that determination, but I can see how that could have definitely went down that way.
Well, especially because I'm curious, like, when you guys start working on, let's say, a Riddler figure, how far confirmed is Jim Carrey as the Riddler? Because we have here, it's like, the Riddler was at one point maybe going to be played by Robin Williams, and even at one point Michael Jackson lobbied for the role, but ultimately in the end Jim Carrey was picked because he was hot off the Mask, and his career was really so. But like, at what point do the toys start getting developed when they already is the actor 100% confirmed, and then you start working on the toy? Okay,
we'll develop off of concept art if it's like a general idea, and especially if there's a script that like we for, again, I'm just going to skip forward to the other movie, but
sure,
we knew Mr. Freeze was going to be in it. We knew Poison Ivy was going to be in it, so we threw a lot of stuff at the wall that could be those kind of features and ideas and stuff. It was almost like whatever actor they pick, we'll put that head on it. Okay. But we already had ideas and concepts based on the little bit of knowledge we had, and later we'll figure that out. Yeah,
because it's like
the toy concept's the bigger issue.
Because also at the same time, like, also in Batman Forever, you have Two-Face, and here's like Billy D. Williams. Originally was in the first movie.
Yep.
I think he from what I read online, he knew that at one point this character was going to become, Two-Face, and that's why he took the role of Harvey Dent. But in the end, Joel Schumacher really wanted Tommy Lee Jones, and that was that. But even then, the rumors were Al Pacino, Clint Eastwood, Martin Sheen, William Dafoe, Nicolas Cage, Robert De Niro. There was all this short list of people that could have been also Two-Face that was being, pursued. And it's like, again, you guys are making a Two-Face toy. Are you making it going like, well, it might be Billy D. Williams,
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't privy to that one, so I don't know
that's why I figure when we're going to get to Batman and Robin, maybe you'll have more on that, because there's also just as equally an interesting list with that. So that's it more or less for the toys. We'll just jump into the movies, bullet points of it. Again, like I said, the tagline for it was "No question, it's Batman forever." There was also all kinds of promotions that were going on in terms of McDonald's was doing these collectible mugs.
Oh, yeah.
The rumor was that the reason why McDonald's went with these mugs, these like very beautiful sculpted glass mugs, was because of the negative backlash, like I mentioned before, with the Batman Returns Happy Meal toys. So they figured they'd play it safe. They didn't know how the movie was going to turn out, because 2 movies in a row already were very dark. They thought maybe the third movie would be the same thing. So if they do these mugs, it's something that's more of a collector's item and less child-focused. And hey, if the movie is kid-friendly, then we know what to do the third time around or fourth time around or whatever. But so that's why they went with mugs instead of toys. And just an interesting little note with that. And so we go into the movie. It's 1995, directed by Joel Schumacher. We have Val Kilmer replacing, oh my God, his name escapes me right now. Beetlejuice.
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton. Jeez, why did I forget that? Michael Keaton. We have Tommy Lee Jones. We have Jim Carrey. Nicole Kidman comes in. Chris O'Donnell for Robin. The only 2 returning actors from the previous 2 movies was Michael Gough, who was Alfred, and Pat Hingle, who was Commissioner Gordon. These 2 actually have the only claim to fame to be in all 4 movies, and would be in all the commercials that are part of that universe. So they were doing OnStar commercials related to the Batman live action movies, as well as Coke commercials and stuff like that. So those two got a lot out of those roles. So movie comes out. It was originally released in the Man Village Theater, which was also known as the Fox Theater in Westwood Village. Supposedly a famous theater for a lot of big movie premieres in California. This was June 9th, 1995. Did you see
Transformers?
Did you see that screening? What is your
we had a Hasbro private screening.
Okay.
That the whole company went to. I think it was like on a Wednesday morning or something, kind of interesting. It was my first. I think it was my first. Yeah, Hasbro screening. Maybe I did go to a Waterworld screening.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, Waterworld's the only one in this time.
I might have gone to a Kenner Waterworld screening. That was something Kenner did pretty regularly. If we did a movie, so later I would see Dragonheart and other stuff. So that was something we always did. We would see the movies as a company.
Okay, so then afterwards, we have the public screening of June 16th in 1995. The movie had a budget of $100 million, and it got a box office of $336.6 million, so a win for this one. Now, the movie was very different in terms of tone and everything, and even toy-wise, than the original two. What did you think of it?
I think at the time it was very much feeling like it was going back to some campy middle ground, right? With the bright colors and everything. It was more broad. Again, it was very toyetic, perfectly suited for that kind of promotion and effort, which, to be fair, doesn't always make for the most lasting entertainment. So it was very, very pop, and I think Schumacher kind of likes that road, right? So I think we were excited for the business that it did. I mean, that's for sure, and it led to the green lighting of the next one very quickly.
Well, a lot of people compare it to the RoboCop brand. How the first and second movie really were hard R-rated movies for a very specific audience, but they couldn't also ignore that there was kids that were buying RoboCop action figures. Sure. In the same way that the first two Batman movies, while they were very dark, and in a lot of ways, it's almost like, a 6-year-old should not be watching this, but yet here's all these Batman movie action figures and buttons and this and that. Where with the RoboCop movie, by the time they got to the third movie, now it's made for everyone in the family. It's almost like, okay, well, we had two Batman movies that were really dark, but we're selling tons of action figures. We have the animated series that's out now. Maybe we got to steer more towards that more friendly G to PG rating.
Absolutely. I mean, and
open it up.
The quick serve restaurants, so the McDonald's in this case,
we're
probably been disappointed. Hasbro probably, we're happy to just push toyetic things. Warner Brothers as a whole company probably saw more potential in light and fun than dark and gloomy. So, yeah, I think that's how it started steering for sure.
Yep. So now we jump to
'Cause again, you're making... Sorry.
Go ahead.
They're starting to make this questionable transition, if it's not handled right, into worrying about the commerce more than the product.
Yeah.
Not to belittle the movies, but clearly decisions are being made not just in service of the story. You can do both if you really want to do it. I mean, Marvel, but back then it looked like more of a commercial than it did a good story.
Yeah. And we're going to get into that, especially now when we get into 1997. Considered by many the cursed year, according to DC fans, for DC and their live-action endeavors. Before we get into Batman and Robin, the 1997 movie directed by Joel Schumacher, in 1997, DC had also two other live-action endeavors. They did the Steel movie, starring Shaquille O'Neal and Judd Nelson, which also had a Kenner toy line. And they also did a made-for-TV live-action movie of the Justice League of America, which was kind of also used as a pilot for a potential TV series. Both the Steel movie and the Justice League of America TV movie were panned by critics, and it just didn't work out well for those two. And then we have a Batman and Robin movie. Now, before we get into the Batman and Robin movie, anything to comment on the Steel Kenner movie?
Well, Steel was in the building. It was like one of these crash projects. I mean, that's a unique movie, right? Like, they had an opportunity. They had Shaquille O'Neal, things were popping on, like previous on the Batman movies, so it made sense. Hit while the iron's hot. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was an interesting project. One of my probably dumbest moves was the video of the movie came into the company, and I was supposed to take it to the guy who needed to get it, and I made a beeline to my buddy's office, and we watched it and fast forward really quick before I gave it to the guy. And kind of an adolescent dumb move. Wasn't really mine to watch. It didn't really affect anything other than kind of set a taste in people's mouth until I redeemed myself. But young and dumb.
Always easier to ask.
So I was the first to see that maybe Steel wasn't going to be as interesting as Batman Forever.
Yeah, and it's always easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. So.
And then I was working on the Total Justice line, which we will talk about on a future date.
Oh yeah.
But because of that and my connection to going out to LA on Batman and Robin, which we'll talk about soon, I dropped off a whole box of Total Justice figures to that production office. Did not have any meetings when I was out there with them, but did drop off a box of toys. Mm.
Also, just for context, after that cursed year of 1997 for live-action movies, DC would not do another live-action film until 2004's Halle Berry's Catwoman, and we all know how that worked out. So DC was having it rough. It was pretty rough. It was pretty rough initially. They're getting back to it, but so let's jump into 1997. Director Joel Schumacher. Now we're talking a brand new Batman again in George Clooney. We have Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze. Chris O'Donnell is back as Robin. We got Uma Thurman, as you mentioned before, for Poison Ivy. Alicia Silverstone is Batgirl, and Alfred is back. Commissioner Gordon is back. And also the WCW wrestler of Robert Swenson is Bane in this movie. Mm-hmm. Robert Swenson, who worked with Hulk Hogan in the past on another movie, No Holds Barred, actually passed away 2 months after the movie was going to come out. So he never even got to see the movie. Passed away of a heart attack, which is par for course. Robert Swenson was a jacked individual, thus why he was picked for Bane. But through obviously artificial means, one wrestler, Davey Boy Smith, a.k.a. the British Bulldog, commented that Mr. Swenson was so jacked that he couldn't put on a T-shirt. He needed people to help him. So, very muscular individual to the point that he couldn't even put his arms over his head, but that's why he was picked to be the larger-than-life Bane character. I'm just bringing that for context there when we're talking, picturing, toys to life in a lot of ways. Now, when we get to the toy line itself, the tagline was, "Be the Man, Batman," or sometimes "The Secrets of the Batcave" was also used as a tagline in the commercials. The "Be the Man, Batman" tagline was also used for a contest ran by Kenner, Six Flags, and Subway restaurants. Six Flags was involved because at the time, Batman was also having a roller coaster themed ride at Six Flags theme parks. The contest was you could win a trip to LA and get a chance to win $1 million. What do you remember of this competition and this Be the Man Batman?
Yeah, I think my friend Susan Stearns created that one. And that's exactly what it was. It was like how, it was like Batman was the biggest thing after Batman Forever, and it was the biggest brand in the company, so they put kind of promotional dollars and things behind it. Had a lot of commercials for Batman toys. So that's how things were done back then. You'd partner up with a few kinds of companies and do these kind of promotions to, everybody wins. And then at the end, maybe there's a shot at winning $1 million. I don't actually know what happened, but, there's always all the other cash and prizes kind of part of that. So a lot of kids got a lot of Batman toys and bikes and all kinds of stuff. I do remember it. It was a big promotion, and it was a really well-received promotion within the company as far as the business of toy making goes. So it was kind of, cool to be, part of that.
And also another promotion. So this time around, Taco Bell would be handling the Batman and Robin promotion. And we have 5 different plastic collector cups, as well as a Unmask the Batman game promotion where the paper cups and the plastic cups would have these stickers on them. You peel them back and it reveals the true identities of the characters. But if you pulled back a Batman and had a Bruce Wayne, you could have the chance to win $1 million, a whole bunch of cash prizes, and even an actual Batmobile. Anything about this that you remember at all, or this is news to you too?
Vague, very vague.
Okay,
yeah.
I go deep into the weeds on this stuff.
Yeah, just kind of learning how to make toys was more important than learning how to market toys. That came later for me.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was hanging out with the marketers as friends and drinking buddies, but not really caring as much as how they did what they did or what happened to it once they did it.
Perfect. So now we jump into...
But like we knew that they were doing those characters for this movie. So we did a whole, bunch of pitch art well in advance of the actors getting hired. So like I have Mr. Freeze art that I have as Patrick Stewart.
Yes, I was going to get into that. So like
we did the same thing. We like did all kinds of here's how cool Batmobiles could look and here's how this could do, and just kind of like saying we want to be part of it, or this is the kind of fun we bring to the party. Whether it got put in the movie or not, this is what we're going to do with your Batmobile, or kinds of things. So we were really partnered up with Barbara Ling, who was the art director, Schumacher, obviously, and then the people, the consumer products people at Warner Brothers were definitely, we were all invested in synergy.
To play off what you said, so yeah, Mr. Freeze originally was supposedly Patrick Stewart, Anthony Hopkins, or even Ed Harris for the role. Ultimately, in the end, Arnold Schwarzenegger was picked. So let's jump into the toys that you worked on before we get into the movie itself. So you got to work on the main line Batgirl, the main line Poison Ivy, and then a whole bunch of others. Yeah.
Just in the context of that, we were in a fire drill situation. So that Batman Forever did really well. How many? There's like only 2 years, 3 years between those films? 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. So I've already said that it takes 14 months to get something to market. So we were behind from the beginning. So they greenlit that movie and hired Clooney and all of that. We were in desperate straits, so I ended up working in the Batman and Robin art department in a room with another guy, Freddie Thoman, for 3 weeks. And under the context of we were so desperate to get reference to make any kind of toy development, even if it was, concept art, and they were so behind the 8 ball because they didn't have an art department, because they greenlit this so fast that they were still hiring, that Kenner made a deal, the president, whatever, made a deal with the Warner Brother people that me and this guy got sent out there, and we would have access to the art, all the art stuff. So I saw guys doing everything. The motorcycles, the clay model of the Batmobile was being made right next door. So I worked with a guy named Harold Belker, who's like an iconic vehicle guy in pre-production art, who I work with again on Transformers 1. Because there's only so many of these guys. But, yeah, so I was out there for 3 weeks and had full access to whatever they were doing, and they were showing me different departments. I saw a guy that was making the batarangs and stuff, the real mechanical ones. And we would do these sketches and send them back, and the elves back in Cincinnati would take those and kind of develop the products that we would ultimately make. And then on our end, Freddie was a vehicle guy too, so he designed Mr. Freeze's ice cream vehicle, that kind of metal thing with the spikes in the front. He did concept art for that because they didn't have anybody to work on it. And then I did ancillary drawings for what became the award that Batman and Robin get at that Gotham Botanical Society.
Yeah.
I designed that. I have the drawings. Like it was such a unique experience. Again, I was very young. I was probably 24 at this point. Maybe not even, maybe 25, maybe. And having meetings with Joel Schumacher and Bob Ringwood, who was doing the costumes, who I watched almost choke on a chicken salad sandwich. and honest, the way his tone was with us, I wouldn't have cared if he did, probably at the time. Yeah, a lot of weird, unique things. I met Wilford Brimley that trip.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And, just generally had a good time as a kid, but it was an interesting relay race because we were behind and we had made models. So we had made a bunch of models to develop all these toys we're going to talk about. And we just didn't know how they were going to be shaped, veneered, right? Mm-hmm. Because we didn't know what the final concept art was. But we kind of knew the line we were going to make. So things like that laser Batman that have those like 3 orange lasers like coming out of his shoulders, like it's some sort of scanning laser.
Yeah.
We had that model made. It's not one of my products, but that model was made, and that was going to be applied to whatever came, as an example of how sometimes toys are developed. So there was a lot of that had already been pre-done. So I'm over there in L.A. sending them back images and little drawings because you couldn't scan stuff back then easily. You couldn't just take a photo. So I had to redraw stuff in the context of how toys are developed so the guy doing that product would know, oh, this is what the Batarang's going to look like. Okay, go.
Well, so going off of that, so you worked on, like, let's say the main Batgirl figure here. Now, we would know that in the movie, a majority of the time, Alicia Silverstone has her blonde hair flowing out of it. Where this, there's a cowl. Is that an example of like those early hiccups of here's what the concept art was given to us of what Batgirl's going to look like? Yeah, and then so obviously the movie goes in a different direction.
Yeah, totally. They wanted a cool, sleek look, but then, where's that girl's hair going to go? And every time she turns her head, she's going to rip her hair out of her head? You can't, it doesn't really make sense. So it made more sense to have it out. And those are the hiccups that happen, So we were developing off concept art, and with that timing, by the time they solved that problem, we were probably already into tooling. Yeah, as an example.
And the choice of weapons here, these gigantic green weapons and stuff. How does that come about?
Everything was very gross, anti-plant or defensive freezing.
Okay.
Or because, again, we didn't know who the actors were going to be. So all these toys were kind of developed with these kind of what I would call more gross-themed, so she's got this big blade to cut vines, as if there were going to be some sort of vine fight between the women. and she would be able to hack her way to Poison Ivy. Those were the little stories we told ourselves when we were developing these kinds of things.
Same thing here with the Jungle Venom Poison Ivy you worked on, which again, I assume that the face sculpt here is Uma Thurman's face sculpt.
Yep. Best. Well, see, another thing that's funny is, so I tell you that guy spent a day working with Uma Thurman to get her face just right. And then depending on the molding conditions and the tooling engineers in Asia and the time spent or not, and pulling hot plastic out of tools, that head can come out looking like somebody purposely made it look like a weirdo, through no fault of any one person. So you hope at the end it looks like the person that it was meant to look like.
Do you think that they pulled
it
off?
Let me tell you about a conversation I had to have with Tyrese in a future podcast.
Oh, yeah. I can only imagine.
So we'll get back to that topic.
So the Jungle Venom Poison Ivy, Toxic Venom Spray Cannon, and Entanglement Vine. So again, it plays up that theme with, to counter Batgirl.
Yep.
Works out there. Works good. We also have some 2-packs. We got the Night Hunter Robin and the Evil Entrapment Poison Ivy. What's the story with these, with the chrome and everything?
Yep. Hasbro's tradition was figures are at one price, deluxe figures are at another, and when you do 2-packs, they don't necessarily always have to have new gear, but there should be something special going on. So in this case, we went with the chrome kind of metallic in Star Wars or in other Batman segments. That gets answered differently, sometimes with more gear, or kind of a multi-pack of weapons in Star Wars' case. But it kind of changes. For Batman, it was often with deco. Batman was, as these toy lines evolved from the 80s into where we are now, so did the financial dynamics around what kind of money you could put into a toy and still have it cost $5 or $10. And Batman was pushing the royalty rate back to the license holder. Really started, what you could do on a non-licensed brand started to really show. So Batman, all I could do was maybe chrome. We didn't have the tooling money to add pieces.
To make something new on the mold, yeah.
Yeah, because the licensing, the math wouldn't allow for that. So we would try to augment what we could, which was molding conditions and techniques around deco or whatever.
For people who
bi-ejection molding, clear, some of them are clear, right? The Poison Ivy, Bane, that kind of thing.
For people, sometimes they might hear the term a partial, which is like a retool. You might hear that sometimes within the Transformer world or other brands. It's when they take a toy and they do a little bit of a new sculpt to it.
Mm-hmm.
So we have another one here, another 2-pack. We have the Brain versus Brawn. Again, same thing, Batman, but this time against Bane.
Yep.
What's the story with this Bane figure here? It has a little bit of, again, you said the nature aspect on him.
Yeah, just trying to bring, again, Bane did not have a big role in the movie. So we were trying to, at that point, we had a lot of freedom to just have fun with the character and make it a toy. Again, Kenner was all about fun toys, or at least interesting. If you picked it up, you knew where it came from or what brand, and you could kind of storytell with it. Was where we were at that point. So just trying to bring that vines and ice stuff to life.
And last but not least, and this is probably the most interesting one of the bunch, the Batgirl Ice Strike Cycle. So this one's interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. Why do you find it interesting?
I don't know. I find it, the fact that you gave her like the visor and everything, so there is some kind of retooling here that's being done.
Yeah.
The fact that they packed a vehicle into a blister, which is something you don't usually see. It's usually a boxed item. So there's a lot of, again, from a pop on the shelving kind of thing.
Yeah,
especially with one, Batman in general.
That one is funny that way. that it is on a blister. I do remember that. Its feature is based on kind of that final ice fight thing with the ice hammer. You know, maybe Batgirl had a bike that did something similar. For me, that was given to me as a, just a development challenge along my way, because up until that point, I had only done action figure work and some of the patterned parts, which are the weapons, things that aren't sculpted, rather that they are model built. So you have to have control art in all dimensions and everything. So not having been an industrial designer, I didn't do a lot of vehicle work because that's a lot more complex of a thing. And this was my first vehicle that I was tasked with, because I was at that point capable of at least doing that level, very symmetrical, one hinge here and there kind of work. I don't think it's a great bike, but that is for my career, it's a milestone product.
Were you pulling a little bit from Batgirls of the past that had motorcycles, or were you just kind of doing your own thing with that?
A little bit. I mean, it was a natural scale for that. Because we would develop within package dimensions, so I must have known it had to be a very skinny thing.
Yeah.
So that it probably just fit, and I think they are on bikes at one point. So
yes, they. Yeah.
So I think that gave us enough permission to go that direction.
That's actually the only time Elisa Silverstone has the cowl, is she has like kind of a motorcycle bike cowl, if anything.
Yeah, that she was totally one where we were working totally off concept art, and honestly, probably what we had hoped would have been a more interesting Batgirl.
Well, different take too.
I don't blame anybody for that, other than the script and the
Yeah, it wasn't Barbara Gordon.
Yeah,
that's why it was a different Batgirl. So let's jump into the movie itself. So again, Joel Schumacher returns, like I mentioned before, with the cast. Budget of $160 million. Box office was $238.2 million. Still a little bit of a win, but not as much as they had hoped for this Batman movie. It released first, again, special screening July 12th, 1997. Were you at that screening?
Yeah, I saw, not at the actual Hollywood one, no, but and again, I saw that one in advance with a group from Kenner and like a radio promotion group. And what I remember about seeing that was I had lived Batman and Robin for a while at that point, that I remember counting the tiles in the top of the theater.
Oh boy.
During the movie.
That's when you know. That's when you know.
Because I was like just not into it and all of that. And now this is a kid that obviously went to the first one dressed as the Joker. To then go and work with the director of the fourth one and to be a part of all of it and have my first stuff coming out, and I'm still realizing like, oh, it doesn't. Yeah. If it doesn't end up where it needs to end up, it's kind of a bummer.
So yeah. Well, that was actually, it's still to this day, it's the only Batman movie, obviously not counting the 66 version, but it's the only Batman movie I had not seen in theaters.
Nice.
I think there was just, even at that time, the buildup wasn't there. Again, that release was June 20th, 1997. Again, while it did make money, it didn't do exactly what was hoped. The comments here was, so the movies had such a bad reputation that the planned Batman vs. Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero animated movie by WB was actually pushed back because they were worried that negative image that this movie created would affect the animated movie. There was also statements from Joel Schumacher after the movie had come out, and he's done interviews since then, saying, there was a lot of pressure from Warner Brothers to make Batman and Robin a more family-friendly film. We decided to do a less depressing Batman movie with less torture and more heroic. I know I've been criticized a lot for this, but I didn't see harm in doing this approach at all. He would later on write an apology to the fans, and he would just say he just wanted to entertain people. George Clooney, years later, was interviewed and said that he felt like it was a giant waste of money, and he felt like he killed the franchise. Of course, he made this statement before the Batman Begins movie had come out, so he assumed that he was responsible for no Batman movie. Chris O'Donnell went on to say that he remembered when Joel Schumacher was filming the movie, Joel Schumacher, instead of just saying action, would say, "Remember everyone, this is a cartoon, action." And he would say that every time on the megaphone before saying action. O'Donnell would then go on to say, "It felt like everything got a little more soft the second time around. On Batman Forever, I felt like I was making a movie. The second time around, I felt like I was making a toy commercial." Interesting statement by Mr. O'Donnell there.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's accurate.
That's why I'm curious. That's why I brought these up, because it's very interesting to hear that coming from the actors in the moment, feeling that there was something toyetic going on here.
Like I said, that whole kind of synergy thing really started to kick in. And we'll talk about it in another podcast, but it gave some directors and or producer people on the other side maybe more leverage if they had things in their back pocket, and the toy companies start to become like de facto art departments for very constituencies within Hollywood for different reasons. So today is not the day for that, but that's an interesting thing we'll get into.
So, of course, after this movie, sequels did not happen. There was rumors and early development of one of two different test names. It was either Batman Triumphant or Batman Unchained, which was going to have Scarecrow as the main villain. Funny how that works with the next Batman movie years later being Batman Begins with Scarecrow. The also would feature Harley Quinn as a small role of the Joker's daughter, oddly enough, coming back for revenge. Also rumors that WWF wrestler Bret Hart was considered for the role of Batman and Bruce Wayne, but nothing ever came of it. The sequel never got past the first early scripts, and that was that. So in relation to this Batman Triumphant and Unchained, we're coming off of now Batman and Robin. Was there any mention, because just like how Forever ends and you guys are already running for the next one, was there any early development for toys or planning for a Batman Triumphant or Unchained if there was going to be a sequel?
No.
No mention. Okay.
Not for us. What happened was, and this is still movie magic that doesn't always make sense to a little illustrator like me, but they already knew that they were in a pickle before the movie came out.
Interesting.
Because I remember going and having my last meeting with the art department. I was out there for, I want to say, maybe the animation doing Batman Beyond.
Okay.
Which was Batman Tomorrow when I was working on it. And so I think I was out there for another meeting, and I went to the where they were on the Warner Brothers lot where I'd worked on, and saw Barb Ling, the art director who had been on the previous two. And I said, "Well, I guess I'll see you on the next one." And she's like, kind of looked at me now this is a woman that worked her way up to being a production designer and everything. And, I don't think it was unraveling the way that you don't want it to unravel. People were blaming the nipples and the car going up the side and this, that, and the other. And, that some of that stuff, gets stuck on the people that shouldn't get stuck on. And I felt like I saw something happen there where she was just like, yeah, I doubt it. I think this roller coaster just crashed. And it wasn't for another little while that I realized that they already knew, and
so the legacy essentially of those movies would kind of be thrown here and there. Bruce Timm would do an episode of Batman where a bunch of kids were talking about what they loved about Batman, and then there was one of these kids named Joel, who was interesting to say the least, liked the Batman costume, and the kids were obviously making fun of him. A little bit of a plug at Joel, a little bit of a dig at him. Yeah. Joel Schumacher supposedly just felt bad about everything and wished some people were at least entertained by those movies.
He was nice to me. Half. We maybe had 3 meetings that we were in together, and he spoke to me in 2 of them, directly in front of everybody, and asked, kind of what we were thinking and stuff. It was a little intimidating, but to be included, not all the Hollywood folks, include us. So the toy people had a seat at the table. We didn't talk, but we heard what was going on. So it was interesting.
So that pretty much wraps up the Batman movies that Aaron worked on here. Of course, years later, then Batman Begins would be a thing, and it would be a different direction, both for the toy industry at that point. Just shows you how long it was in between the two. It was quite a period of time before Batman Begins.
And so the tie-in there is that movie didn't do well. The Batman team had been the breadwinner, right? The big boys action thing. Mm-hmm. Batman and Robin doesn't do well. We don't need our star people on Batman anymore because we don't know when the next movie's coming. That's how I end up on Star Wars.
There we go. And that's a tie-in.
In 98,
Yeah. So then we end up with Episode 1, if you go back and listen to that in the archive, our first episode about Star Wars Episode 1. So to cap it off, what do you feel, because again, this was really like your first gig in a lot of ways, especially with the Batman Forever. What do you feel you learned from that experience with both of those movies?
I did a lot of, those were my first, I learned how licensing works, and really how a company kind of takes their characters and lets other companies do things. That was interesting to me, like to see the business of it. I'd bought DC Comics, I'd consumed media, but to see how the sausage gets made was really, really cool on a movie like Batman.
Especially Batman
in LA in the mid-90s, really cool.
Yeah.
Really interesting to see. Now, it didn't all go together and coalesce as everybody would have dreamed, but still, I think back at that. It was a great learning time, great access. Really, certainly helped me along the way. As far as the toys, we've me and my friends that worked on it, Batman is the single greatest toy envelope you can create. It's a rich guy that has endless resources and drive to fight crime, and he is really enamored with bats. So you can veneer anything and any story and create a reason why Bruce Wayne, Batman, would have created this to go against one of his rogues gallery. And I still think Batman is the greatest veneer to apply cool toys to, followed only by Iron Man, who doesn't have the cool scallops.
And there's no Iron Man doesn't have like the it might have been a Hulkbuster armor, but Batman could have like an anti-hockey, Mr. Freeze armor. Yeah. And somehow it makes sense because it just works in the scenario. Which there was because he's always prepared. That's another factor of him. So even if it doesn't make sense, he's already thought of it, and here's his costume. Exactly. So it worked great with toys, and that's what I learned. I learned what made for a great toy shape to just have fun and create all kinds of fun, active things on. And we will talk more about that on other segments of Batman and how that manifests itself. So that'd be fun. Because there's, again, the one thing that we're going to stress here is that there's a lot of Batman in this portfolio with Aaron. There's a lot of different brands and stuff. So we're going to be revisiting Batman in the future much more frequently than we think because there's so much. There's a lot of cool stuff from, you mentioned Total Justice, the And of course, like your ninjas. Gotta love those ninjas. That's. I almost feel like I think we need to do that as a segment in itself because it seems there's so much story there.
I think we're going to do the pitch, man. We're going to do the exact same pitch that I sold it in.
Oh, man. Okay.
I have all the boards. I have everything. We're going to do the same pitch.
But yeah, so again, this was Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, and some of the other movie stuff. Again, the stories and everything from behind the scenes with Kenner. Again, and this is the Toy Armada with Aaron Archer and Protoman, your host here. So that's more or less it. If anyone has any questions in relation to the Batman stuff here, again, hashtag the Toy Armada on Twitter, or just, send a private message. We'll put it in the queue and see what will be picked for next episode to talk about. But that's more or less it. Thank you again, Aaron, for being here and talking about The Dark Knight.
Sure thing. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Alrighty then. So again, this is the Toy Armada with Aaron Archer, and we'll see you guys next time.